Hi guys, Peter Dingle here with our program that we ran right up until the end of 2021 at the beginning of 2022 about heal the gut. In other words, how to actually fix the gut. And you'll see a lot of my other gut presentations. I give you snippets and bits and pieces around the place, but this one we're actually going to go into some detail about looking at the various gut conditions. For example, LPR, laryngopharyngeal reflux, SIBO, and IBS, IBD. So am I giving you at the moment all the potential solutions? No. But what I'm trying to do is get you to focus on fixing the whole gut at once. And that's my emphasis. Trying to fix one little part of the gut doesn't work because as you'll see as in the screenshots and the information I present to you, there is so much about healing it all at once and the need to do it. So if we start off pretty simply, without any doubt, we know we can help people. We've got recommendations and commendations and testimonials and letters, and people walk up in the street and say, thank you. I had a gentleman who was struggling playing golf. He was 50 years of age. He came to some of our seminars, Heal the Gut type seminars, and he went away and literally he was back on the golf course. All his pain, or virtually all his pain, had gone. He took up a bit of stretching, but all of the stuff we told him about, he started to implement, and he knows, we know it works. Now, as I said, this isn't all of the solutions. There's more to come. Now, I should put in here a disclaimer too. This information is based on science, unlike what you will see in a lot of the medical industry. However, it is not a personal recommendation, nor am I consulting you as a health professional. I am a health researcher putting this information up to open your eyes to the vast majority of things we can do to heal our body and heal our gut at the same time. So here's another testimonial. I'm not going to go through this. You can hang around and hold it if you want. These are some of the things, though, you'll see that I'll talk about and I have talked about. And all of a sudden, we've got this person who's been on all these anti-reflux medications, and wow, they feel so much better, got so much energy back. And yeah, they had to do a lot of things, but it's trial and error. So here's another one. I like putting this one up because after fixing their reflux, of course, they're also in remission from psoriatic arthritis, which is very common, a very common outcome of when we talk and people walk away and go, oh, okay, I didn't realize, but some of my pains and joints and aches have disappeared as well. Thank you. And this person's problem was chronic flatulence, no bloating, pain or odor, just downright embarrassing. And so a little bit of flatulence there. And my message to her is just walk quickly so no one even hears it or sees it. Jokingly aside, we've known for thousands of years that all your gut illnesses impact our health overall. Without any, wild animals know it. Humans knew it up until about 50 years ago, and it's only taken this resurgence of science over the last 20 years to relearn it, but relearn it with some amazing information. Poor gut health sits at the pinnacle of all of the adverse health conditions, whether it's COVID, COVID and the gut, arthritis and the gut. It doesn't matter. I've got a list of all these conditions. These are the gut conditions, obviously, that we'll be looking at some of them today. And people say, but how, if I've got reflux, and I've got LPR and all these conditions, it increases my risk of something called Barrett's esophagus and esophageal cancer. Well, you may not be aware, but the program that I'm talking about, based on studies, reduces your risk of Barrett's esophageal cancer by lowering LPR and reflux, but also because of the potent antioxidant and anti-inflammatory nutrients we're going to be talking about. So, and as I said, this is just a snapshot to get you started, and we'll be putting more up as we go. But it just shows you the diseases. All these diseases are skyrocketing in Western nations. In China, they're increasing even faster because they've gone so fast into rapidly into a Western economy with junk foods and stresses and so on. So all the diseases are linked to the gut. And the great thing is when you start working on the gut, you reduce your risk of lots of these conditions, which is a win-win situation. So if I can't convince you at this point in time that you need to do something, then look at this list. Put your hand up if you've got any of them. Put your hand up if you want any of them. And if you don't, then great, because what we're going to do is show you how to lower oxidation, inflammation, and acidosis, which to a large degree comes from the gut. In fact, it was a Russian zoologist back in 1907 called Elie Metchnikoff who said that some chemicals were getting out of the gut into the blood, causing all of these chronic illnesses they were starting to see back then 100 years ago. Now, by the way, back then 100 years ago, they were only seen in the very rich and the very poor. And now these are seen in everyone across the board because of our lifestyles. To sum it up though, we've treated our digestive system like a rubber hose. We've just treated it atrociously with no respect whatsoever and no consideration of what it's trying to do to help you and how it's keeping you alive. But our digestive system is exhausted from too many big meals, not a Christmas meal, but a Christmas meal 2 or 3 times a day. Too many big meals eaten over too many hours, which are too difficult to absorb and digest, under too much stress as well. I'll throw that one in there. And so our digestive system is trying to work with the bare minimum and being dumped on every single day, multiple times. So if you get that, the first thing you're going to think about is how can I relax? How can I relieve? How can I take some of the pressure off my digestive system? And we'll continue to mention this all the way through the program. But remember, it's like any system, if you've just run a marathon, which is your digestive system is doing it every day, you don't feel like running another marathon the next day. And if you do, and after a few days, well, guess what? You're very, very sick. And that's what's happening to your digestive system. And it starts at the mouth, goes literally to the bottom. And we need to take the time to do the things that nurture our digestive system. Now, you all know my emphasis on healing the gut starts with alkalinity, or with pH, the acid-alkali balance. And it's really clear. You cannot fix the gut if your pH is out. Okay, you got it? You cannot fix the gut if your pH is out. And your pH ranges from 0 to incredible acidity. One is hydrochloric acid, to 14, which is alkaline. And up there, you've got about 12 and so on, Drano and all those cleaning products, about 10, sodium bicarb around about 8, and so on and so on. Neutral is about 7. And why this is so important is because the pH in the gut determines the rate of all the chemical reactions in the body. Now, we're not talking about something called acidosis now. I'll cover that in another topic altogether. But we're talking about in your digestive system, the pH in your digestive system from your mouth, following it down through your esophagus, into your stomach, and all these will alter. And as they alter, it changes the rates of chemical reactions, which is digestion, and the fermentation and metabolism by the bacteria and the fungi in our intestines. So by changing the pH, you alter what can be digested and what can grow. So at the simplest level, your mouth is supposed to be alkaline, a pH of around about 7. Now, if that's neutral, okay, that's just on neutral. But if it's slightly acidic, it promotes the growth of acid-loving bacteria, which produce more acid, and those acid-loving bacteria producing the acid lead to more gum disease and tooth decay and so on. Do you get the idea? Whereas if it's a little bit alkaline, and we should be drinking just slightly alkaline water, or washing your mouth out with a little bit of sodium bicarb first thing in the morning, something as simple as that can make a huge difference to what can grow in your mouth. And it all comes down to pH. And I'll show you this as we go along. But if you look on this picture here, you'll see in the stomach, we've got a pH of about 1 to 1.4 to 3. And that level For digestion to occur in the stomach, it has to be below 2, and you'll see that in a moment. And if it doesn't become very acidic, then you're not going to digest, and then you're going to end up with all these partially digestive chemicals going into other parts of the body and fermenting and causing lots of problems. So in your so you get acid in your stomach, and it has to be. Now, here's a little tip. No, I'll wait till I get to there. Then in your colon, in your small intestine, if you've got acid in the stomach, and you'll see this in a moment, then it sets off a trigger. As soon as food goes into the small intestine, which is the reddier orange down the bottom, the squiggly wiggly one, as soon as it goes in there, it triggers a release of sodium bicarbonate from your pancreas, and enzymes and bile, okay, from your gallbladder, which are all alkalizing. So all of a sudden it changes from acid to alkaline. Why? Because that stops the bacteria growing. Wow. And bacteria don't like growing in an alkaline environment. So in your small intestine, you have an environment that doesn't allow or doesn't want bacteria. So the pH changes, and then it goes down into the large intestine where it becomes more acidic, more microorganisms metabolizing and fermenting, producing more acids, and as a result ending up with more acidity, higher level of acidity, so a pH of 3 to 4 in your large intestine. Now, those changes in the pH, which I'll describe in a little bit more depth in a moment, are critical to good gut health. And here is the most important one, where it starts in the stomach. And there's a lot of misinformation. You know, we got too much acid, not enough acid. Well, let me tell you, if anything, it's not enough acid. But here it is, in most cases, it's not enough acid at the right time. And your body releases hydrochloric acid. So your stomach releases hydrochloric acid and pepsin and other digestive juices to break down everything that goes into the stomach. But for it to work, it all needs to be there at the right time of food. So rushing your food down puts big problems there. Hence why I said earlier, take your time, stop putting so much stress on your digestive system. Simply, if you get reflux, simply by slowing your eating habits down, doubling or tripling the time, and remember you say you enjoy food, then you're probably going to reduce your risk of reflux by about 10 to 20%. Wow, how simple is that? But let's look at what's on this table. It basically shows the different functions of pH. And if you've got a pH of 3, and you've gone to the right-hand side here, if you've got a pH of 3, your iron, zinc, magnesium, your calcium, your minerals can be broken down. See, all the foods are in a bit of a matrix. So the magnesium and the calcium's held together, the protein's held together, all that stuff. And it's only with the pH of 3 that it opens up and it releases the minerals so that then they can be digested. So you may have them, but if you don't have a pH of 3, so in the old days, your GP would have said, well, go and have some silver beet. And along with the silver beet, have some orange juice, which has a pH of 3, or apple cider vinegar, pH of 2. Now, a pH of 3 will also enable your B vitamins, e.g. B6, B12, folate, bio, to start to untangle. And so we've got all these things that are happening, but it's only when we get to a pH of 2 that your proteins, now proteins are the working molecules of the body. Yeah, they make up the muscles and they do all these things. They're really good, but even more importantly, they are the working molecules. They're the enzymes, not just for digestion, but that coordinate the 37 billion chemical reactions going on in your body at any point in time, any second. And so all that is down to these proteins, the amino acids, in terms of enzymes. But your amino acids also make up things like your collagen. Wow, collagen. So that's a connective tissue in the joints. Yeah. That's also your skin, but it's also the connective tissue holding your gut together. So if you have any gut issues, then guess what? You've probably got collagen issues. And the first thing you say, well, do I need to supplement? No. First of all, you've got to get the pH right, because you can only get the proteins, the amino acids, to do all this stuff if you've got a pH of 2 in your stomach. So you see how important it is. And by taking sodium bicarb with a meal, wrong. Taking those antacids with a meal, wrong. You're stopping your body digesting. And what happens is the proteins then go through your small intestine. They can't be digested because they're still in these. See, your proteins are these really, 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 really big molecules. And it's only with an acid level of 2 that they untangle. And once they're untangled, then your digestive enzymes can break off that part, and that part. So we have to untangle them. It's a pretty simple strategy, but it has to be 2. And that's why apple cider vinegar before a meal is actually fantastic. So you have it diluted, check up later, we got it, and you have it with a meal. Neurotransmitters, everything from serotonin, and you'll hear me talk about melatonin. Melatonin is my hero for the day today. And your body produces so much melatonin in the gut, but it can only do it if it has a pH of 2 in the stomach. Understand that, and we'll talk about it later. Now, in addition, what it does is it also, when you've got an acid stomach, it breaks down the toxins. It starts to kill the microorganisms like Helicobacter, Candida, Clostridium, all those nasty ones that might be in your stomach. It's actually preventing them from growing and reproducing. And as soon as you allow it to become alkaline in the stomach without getting that acidity, then you're going to allow these microorganisms to grow. And as a result, it just sets up this chain reaction throughout the whole body. So gut coordination is the third one. I'll mention that, but all the gut coordination, starting right from the mouth, your senses on the way down tell you the pH of foods and everything, and it gets it coordinated in the gut, the release. And the pH in the stomach, and I'll show you this in a moment, the acidity in the stomach triggers the alkalinity in the small intestine, which then triggers the movement going through the gut. So all of the gut movement, food moving through the gut, is dependent on pH. First pH in the stomach, then pH in the small intestine. So please don't ignore pH. And the problem we face is that your typical meal that you would have in a Western society, and I know you don't eat this, unfortunately, though, a lot of people do. This is the normal. This is the norm. And as a result of eating this, your gut is pretty well in an alkaline state, well, a very low acidity state. So it finds it almost impossible to digest, and as a result, all those repercussions occur. Now, by contrast, if you eat green leafy vegetables, some fruit, herbs and spices and nuts, guess what? Yeah, they help acidify the stomach a little bit and, of course, alkalize the body. It's a win-win situation. So again, moving away from the Western diet. Now, LPR is something that haunts a lot of people without knowing. It's probably the single most common cause of loss of voice for singers and performers and other people obviously out there who didn't notice it. And I found this out 5 years ago, hence why I spent a lot of time working on it and trying to resolve it. And essentially what happens is that some of the gastric contents come up and get embedded. In particular, the pepsin gets embedded in your esophagus, and it gets into the first layer of cells. And as a result, it can become reactive anytime you have anything that triggers it, e.g., something that is very acidic. Now, there is a book out there, I think it's called The Acid Lover's Diet and so on. It's a load of crap. Please don't get it. Please, it's a load of crap. It does, mention this, but the reality is it gets you off all these foods. You see, when you have an orange or a lemon, that's, hey, it's the juices, the liquid. Just stay away from them, and alkaline water. In fact, here are the solutions to LPR. Not don't eat good food. Eat the most nutritious food you can. What we're going to do is try and resolve reflux. But in the meantime, what we want to do is alkalize your esophagus. And it's only at a pH of 8 that you denature the pepsin. So the pepsin that's stuck in your esophagus, at least this is the theory and it worked for me, will be triggered whenever there's this acid liquid going down. And so, or coming up. And so what you want to do is lower the risks of that by having alkaline water. Yes. So you constantly sip on alkaline water, a mouthful of alkaline water later on, another mouthful of alkaline water, food, other drinks that are alkaline, coconut water, for example. You can all check it out. There's a lot of information, and I'll be putting some more up when I talk about alkalinity in another program. But what you're after is that all the liquids that you consume are alkaline. So coffee, unfortunately, isn't. Tea, unfortunately, isn't. But you can add a little bit of sodium bicarb to these drinks to alkalize it. So just a tad in there. Now, remember, I've said don't have sodium bicarb with a meal, but you can with a drink as long as it's not with a meal. And you'll hear me talk about this a little bit later. So what we want to do is stop that pepsin triggering, and not just triggering off with an acid drink, but triggering off. What we want to do is denature it, to break it down. And to break it down, it needs a pH of around about 8 to 10. So alkaline is a must for LPR, laryngopharyngeal reflux. That's that constant clearing of the throat and so on. Now here, I want to talk about the beautiful chemical called melatonin. Now in Australia, you have to get it on a prescription. However, you can get it at iherb.com. How's that? Nice and simple, nice and easy. And most of the studies are of 3 to 5 milligrams per night. And the studies vary. It can be from an hour before meal to, an hour before dinner to an hour before sleep to right before sleep. And you go, but how does that affect my digestive tract? Well, one, it improves sleep. However, melatonin is probably the most important chemical messenger in your digestive tract. So by simply supplementing at nighttime with some melatonin, you're able to then build up your supplies of melatonin. And when it comes to sending the right messages down through your body to open up, to close, to move things through, all of those things which are coordinated by melatonin, it's got enough in there. So melatonin is an absolute must. And as I said, iherb.com. Overseas, you can get it just about anywhere. Australia is the only stupid place where you cannot get it because of nutritional politics. That's all it is. But the great thing about melatonin is it's also a potent anti-inflammatory, antioxidant nutrient that helps neutralize any damage that's already been done in your, literally in your esophagus, in your stomach. It's been shown to help heal, lower the risk of gastric cancers and Barrett's esophagus. It's been shown to lower the risk of gut cancers and colorectal cancers. A whole raft of these other benefits come from it. Now, there are minor side effects like feeling of sleepiness or sluggishness. And my personal experience there is I just took my time, worked out what worked. When I felt a bit sluggish for a few days, I got off it, I lowered it, and now I know that I can work with about 3 milligrams per night. I do it about 5 or 6 nights a week. One, it's fantastic for sleep, but two, I know I'm getting all those gut benefits at the same time. Now, there's a young man just a week ago, and I've just been helping him, guiding him in the program, and he had IBS, and the doctor wanted to, do all these things, and he's gone all the probiotics and he's done all this, nothing is working. I said, well, look, here it is, just try melatonin. Okay, the research is overwhelming. It shows up the benefits on, you'll see some of this, IBS, and he did. And yeah, it just shows up in inflammatory bowel disease and irritable bowel syndrome. Melatonin is very effective for helping resolve those issues. So you're thinking, wow. Oh, and he had some IBS as a result of having to get a vaccine, and it's triggered off IBS. And as a result, he found the next day, literally, it was about 80% better. He'd already done the probiotic, he'd done all the groundwork, done all the other things, set his gut up to be healthy, and we're still working on it now. You know, we just have a quick chat about it occasionally, and we know melatonin works well. Here is a study that they did on melatonin. Again, pretty simple. A randomized controlled trial of 27 adults who had reflux. And 3 milligrams of melatonin alone at bedtime was effective in treating the symptoms over a placebo. However, in another study, they did pretty well the same, except they compared it to one of the major reflux drugs. And guess what they found? 100% of the patients on the supplement group had regression of symptoms compared to 66% on the toxic drug. Wow. Why aren't we told this? Why doesn't everybody know about it? Well, guess why? Because there's no money in doing these type of things. There's no benefit. And unfortunately, there is so much corruption in the medical system that people find it really hard to, get the right answers. But here are the studies, and I hope I got the other study up there as well. But they also showed, and so some of this stuff is in the reflux program as well. So have a look at the reflux program, and they added some B vitamins in there, and the turnaround and the benefits were even better. So message is melatonin was incredibly effective and well worth the few dollars you spend for it. I think it's about $12 it cost me for about a 2-month supply of melatonin, ridiculously cheap on iHerb.com. Now, with that in mind, I'm going to come up with some other solutions to help you along the way. But I'm trying to give you a picture of what's going on around the body. And often SIBO is the result of poor digestion in the stomach as well, and poor digestion down below. They're often connected. Hence why we need to understand them all. And this is when you've got abdominal discomfort or pain. Now, this can occur from anywhere from 20, 30 minutes on for 2 or 3 hours. As distinct from your large intestine, which is usually about 12, or unless you've got the runs, it's much quicker. But if you don't have diarrhea, then it's probably going to be at 12 hours before you get to pain with your large intestine, your colon, and irritable bowel syndrome, inflammatory bowel disease, or IBS. So the message here is simple. The timing of the pain can tell you a lot about it. And so with SIBO, it's very common. And what the problem with SIBO is, again, it's stopping it's changing the whole pH of the system. And as a result, you end up with poor digestion occurring. So you end up with a whole raft of nutrient deficiencies. You end up with the wrong type of bacteria growing. And as a result, they're actually using some of your good nutrients and leading to intestinal permeability, leaky gut in the small intestine. And one of the things, or some of the chemicals that get through with SIBO into the large intestine. And remember, I've got a program on SIBO specifically. So head there. If you think it's SIBO, then head there and get into it. And one of the problems, or the problems associated with these chemicals literally getting into the blood, is that it will then cause all of these issues around the body: aches and pains, mental confusion, brain fogginess, memory, concentration, all of them. And sometimes it can be manifest as these huge problems people have. Now, how prevalent is it? Well, SIBO, most of the studies show it's probably, if you've got any gut issues, there's a pretty good chance that you're going to have SIBO. Now, if I stand up here, and I hope you can see this as I move back here, it's usually around about here. So just below where my stomach is, about there, that's the first part. But studies have shown that people on proton pump inhibitors are 50%, people with obesity are around about 17, 18, 20%. They've found that children have shown up to have SIBO. Overweight children with a lot of gut conditions, a huge percentage of them, and about 25% of the gut-related problems where children go to the GPs and specialists are probably SIBO related. So we're seeing a lot of people with SIBO. So what are the mechanisms? Well, the first one is gastric and intestinal pH. There is no doubt about it. And I've already described some of this, and I'll show you again in a moment. It all comes down to pH. So what we want to do is in the small intestine is alkalize. In the stomach, it's acidify, and the acidify triggers off your body alkalizing your small intestine. So we wanted that. Pancreatic issues, bile acid issues coming from the gallbladder, and what's called your MMC, your motility migrating complex, which is how everything moves through the system, your immune dysfunction, and again, your small intestinal microbiome. So in the program, as we go through, and you'll see that this one works on both, the whole thing works on reflux, SIBO, and IBD. So the message is pretty simple. So the first of all is we put a lot of stress on the pancreas. And the pancreas is your digestive and hormone, right? Digestive, enzyme, and hormone producing organ. And it's so critical. So from a digestive perspective, it produces the enzymes to break down the foods in the small intestine. So the stomach is breaking down the acid and doing a little bit of pre-digestion. But your enzymes in the small intestine, which work on in an alkaline environment, right, come from the pancreas. And unfortunately, the more processed foods we eat, the more our pancreas has to stress itself to digest. So the more processed foods, whenever you cook food or process it, you lose the digestive enzymes. So what we're telling you to do is literally have more raw foods, smoothies, juices, whatever you want. That will take, but remember, fresh for the enzymes and so on. And so what you want to do is take the pressure off, remove those processed foods, the overcooked foods, the cooked foods even, and look at ways of getting into having foods that have literally a higher acidity level. So when they get into the stomach, it's encouraging it, takes the pressure off, and then it gets into the small intestine, it then takes the pressure off there too. So enzyme-rich foods, add some of these, but all your fruits, veggies, and things like that, raw, have more enzymes. But of course, there are ones you can add to it. Pawpaw, you probably may know that in the old days, if you wanted to tenderize meat, you put a bit of pawpaw, maybe even pineapples and mango fruits, miso, warm or hot, soy sauce, raw honey. Lots of things are rich in these enzymes, which will help with digestion. And of course, supplementing as well, which we'll talk about later. Now, this is a little diagram, and I put it up just to show you, rather than going into all the complexities. But whatever we do in our small intestine and our digestive system, whatever we do in our small intestine alters all of the issues like cholesterol, gut dysbiosis, gut cancers, a whole raft of things. So what we want to do is make sure bile, which is bile, by the way, is released by your gallbladder. Your liver produces it, which is the red, funny little hat-shaped thing. I think it is. I'd call it. It actually produces the bile. Now, bile is injected or goes to your gallbladder, which is injected into your small intestine when, you ready? When your the pH of the digestive system says, okay, I'm acid, so I'm alkaline, triggers the bile. Bile in itself is alkaline. Bile also is, believe it or not, antibacterial. So everything is saying in the small intestine, what we want to do is decrease the bacteria and increase the pH. So everything that's going on there, the sodium bicarb release, the enzyme release, the bile release, it's all saying alkalize and lower the microbial content. And that's what we're after. And bile is, now one of the problems we face is that in some cases of reflux, you can actually have what's called bile reflux. So people, it literally goes from the small intestine into the, up through into the stomach and then it can come up as reflux as well. So what do you do? Well, just work on the reflux program that I'm telling you about. How to increase bile, because bile, particularly if you've had an operation and remove your gallbladder, then what you want to do is find things that are going to naturally help with bile. One of the main functions of bile is to actually help digest fats. And if you've had a gallbladder operation, you probably realize it's very hard eating any fatty foods. But what you want to do is add the foods that increase the bile production in your body. And we've known, for example, any of the bitter foods, things like rocket and kale, beetroot, artichoke, pickles, leafy green vegetables, as well as things like Swedish bitters, which have been around for probably a couple of 100 years, are known for stimulating bile release. So great addition to everyone, but particularly if you've got gallbladder issues. And you can also get some bile supplements for some really advanced nutritional suppliers. And again, they're consumed with the meal to actually help digest the fats. And again, you probably want to stay particularly away from any fats, plant or animal, if you've got gallbladder issues. But at this point in time, it can help. Now, here is something I've been alluding to already. The importance of the alkalinity, or sorry, the pH, to determine the movement through the digestive tract. Nothing will move through the digestive tract unless the pH is right. So if I go through this little diagram over here, the stomach acid pH, when you've got enough stomach acid in there, so you've eaten a small meal, lots of raw veggies, you may even supplemented with some hydrochloric enzymes, hydrochloric acid and enzymes, or a little teaspoon of apple cider vinegar. I'll talk about this in part 2. You've supplemented there, your stomach's pH is acidity, so it's acid. And as a result, it then sends a trigger to your vagus nerve. And your vagus nerve is the one literally that goes up to your brain, from your gut to your brain, and vice versa. And it says, okay, get everything moving through. And it opens up the sphincter from the stomach, and it then allows the food to go in. And that pH, that really strong acid food, hopefully a pH of 2 or 3, going into your small intestine, then triggers the release of sodium bicarbonate. And that alkalizes the small intestine. Which then, you may remember, I talked about then the enzymes are released and can work. Now that then triggers another part, phase 2, with bile release. And the bile is then released from your gallbladder, and that alkalizes and is antibacterial. And then because of that, it then releases something called motilin. And this motilin is one of the chemical messengers that then starts the movement of everything, getting it right, going through the gut, through the small intestine. So if you have problems and everything is, you've got that bloating in SIBO, then you've probably got problems with 1, pH, 2, microorganisms, 3, not enough movement to push everything through. Wow. So what we want to do by doing it this way, you get the motilin occurring, you get the pH, and as a result, everything starts to work properly. And then you go into phase 3 as a result of the motilin, and phase 3 is where it's going boom, 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 and pushing it through, boom, 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 pushing it through. But it's all pH dependent. And as a result, your bile and motilin, because it's pushing it through, starts to decrease. And as it passes through your small intestine, it becomes an environment where bacteria can start growing again halfway through. Not at the beginning, but halfway through. And it all begins with pH. So if you just have a look at that and go, okay, you don't need to understand it all, but you have to understand that without that pH, nothing is going to move through the gut. And nobody else talks about it. Now, I've been talking about that probably now almost 8 years. It's in our book, Gut Secrets, and it's in all my talks. And if you don't fix the pH, it's not going to work. No matter what you do, you might get it going through once, but then it's going to stop. And you want to, by the way, pH will alter the constipation. By the way, melatonin is a great one for constipation as well. So you get these hints I'm giving you are pretty amazing. Now, when you've got SIBO, there's a whole raft of other conditions there too. And I don't have time to go into them, but you may need to come back to this and look at, do I have any intolerances? Do I have any food sensitivities? Am I reacting to sugar, lactose, fructose? Can the FODMAP help me? Now, FODMAP is a diet that basically stops everything that can be fermented. So it's not a great idea, but it's a way of isolating if you've got SIBO or not and what may be some of the players. So FODMAP says don't have these foods that are going to ferment in the small intestine, which is okay to start with, but it's a treatment, short-term, weeks maxima only, because going on it for a long time, you will end up with nutritional deficiencies. And of course, what you should be doing is my whole program. So go on a restricted nutritional program for a short time, but in the same time, do all the other bits and pieces I'm talking about. So it starts to move things through and get everything back in balance and have the antibacterial effects and so on. So, and there's another one called the carbohydrate exclusion diet. And for some people, you may even need to test for a histamine intolerance. And again, I don't have time to go in, but there is, for probably about 20% of the people with SIBO and major gut issues, there's probably an underlying cause that can be looked at and fixed as well. Now, probiotics and SIBO, most of the studies that I've come across show that probiotics are incredibly effective for SIBO. And you're thinking, well, the problem with SIBO is that the stuff that's gone into the gut, into the small intestine, ferments. And it ferments. And when it ferments, it produces these gases. And the gases can't go up to burp out. And they can't go down to fluff out. So they go out and bloat you. So why would you want probiotics? Because if you can get the better probiotics in there to outcompete the nasty probiotics, then you've got a competitor in there as well. So probiotic supplement have been shown on a number of occasions to lower the byproducts of SIBO, hydrogen gas, etc., but improve SIBO symptoms quite dramatically along the line. And some of the probiotics, most of the probiotics the good probiotics you can get, and you can check out our website if you want to find the ones we use. But at the end of the day, the good probiotics are effective in minimizing, reducing SIBO. Just part of the solution. There is no one solution to all of it. There's just a part of it, lots and lots of parts. Now, there's a whole heap of information on herbs. And herbs, of course, if you go to your local medical drug dealer, they'll tell you that, herbs don't work. There are thousands of years of research on herbs and actually hundreds, if not even more, studies on them. And the great thing about them is that they're cheap, they're effective, you can add your own, you can, they are so simple. And one of the things I tell people just about living with gut conditions is constantly add herbs and spices to your foods anyway. Add a bit of thyme, a bit of sage. Wow, it's that easy. Add a bit of oregano or some cloves and garlic. Put a bit more garlic in. Some coconut oil, all these other bits and pieces in there, as you add them in, are all having this effect. Now, I've listed down some of the ingredients that have been shown to be positive in gut health and in SIBO. And the studies are overwhelming. Yes. Are they going to necessarily eliminate it? No, but the part of the program I do is always about doing lots of little bits that help the big bits to fix it up. And then it becomes a solution, a permanent solution. So you can add, again, some of these things, some sage and thyme into your foods every single day. What a great idea. Go back to cooking how it should be. K-fiber, fantastic. And of course, you've heard me talk about that many times. I'm not even going to go into it, but it has so many benefits out there in terms of gut health. It's wrong to call it K-fiber. It's K-gut food would be a better option out there. Now, the next thing you want to do is obviously move things through the gut a little bit, the small intestine a little bit quicker. If you've got SIBO, it's the fact that they've actually stopped or slowed down so much that they're fermenting, producing the gas and causing the problems, poisoning the gut wall, leaky gut, and causing the problem. So what we want to do is increase the movement by using foods and supplements that are called prokinetic, things that keep moving through it. Now, by the way, I'll give you an idea here. Melatonin is generally prokinetic, so that may help straight away. That may help. Water and green tea. So first thing in the morning, my ritual is pretty simple. I have a glass of water and 3 cups of green tea, and I tell you, my whole system starts to go, whoa, and it moves it through pretty quickly. Model Pro is another product out there. It's got ginger, 5-HTP, acetyl-L-carnitine. You can use that one as directed. Ibergast is an international one that's been around probably 40 years or something like that, a long time. And you can look at these herbs and go, wow, I know some of those. Peppermint, lemon balm. I've got them growing in my garden. In fact, I have lots of herbs growing in my garden, and you can just add them in anyway. Even when your gut is working perfectly, add them in anyway. That's the great thing about these, is that they have multiple benefits. Usually they're anti-inflammatory, they're antioxidant, they're usually anti all the, what we call the opportunistic species, the nasties one like Helicobacter, all of the toxic microorganisms in our gut. These herbs and these spices are generally help control it on a day-to-day basis. It's a win-win-win situation. Bowel Restore is another product here produced in WA. Fantastic results I've heard and seen. And there was one I've come across in the literature. Now, remember, this is all in the literature, but one called Jiang Bin, now XBP. Now, please ignore my pronunciation there, but it has been shown to be effective in moving through things for the gut, and in particular with SIBO. And then you've got some other ones, ginger extract, some of the herbs and bits and pieces, curcumin extract, which is turmeric, and ginseng. So again, lots of these herbs have this prokinetic effect, but also they are usually antibiotic against the opportunistic species and have other overwhelming nutritional benefits. Many of these herbs, for example, will help promote the growth of good bacteria in the large intestine. So adding some herbs and spices, it's a win-win-win situation. Whereas if you take a modern drug, it can fix the symptoms, but usually is a win-lose-lose situation. So a bit more investigation, take your time, have a look. Again, if you want all of the information on SIBO, we've got a lot more in the SIBO group. Now, then we've got the gut microbiome, our large intestine, and, it's 1,000 species, varieties of bacteria, archaea, fungi, protozoa, and viruses. Yep, viruses. Nearly all your respiratory viruses are in your lungs, e.g. COVID, etc. If you've had it, it'll be there and it's found in there, and that's fine. And your gut is obviously one of the main organs to help fight it. So, but you've got 100 trillion. What's important here is the mix of them. And so to get the really good, healthy mix in here, what we want to do is create a healthy, biodiverse gut, not just of 5 or 10 species, but 1,000, and not just 1 or 2 big numbers, but 30, 40 that are high in numbers, because the greater the competition, the healthier your gut is. And all of the studies show that decreased diversity in your gut correlates with virtually every one of those illnesses that I put up there. So we want to increase that. And the simplest way, and I'll state it straight away, and we'll go into it later in part 2 as well, but the simplest way is just have more variations and combinations of your veggies, fruits, nuts, herbs, and spices. Just a little bit, a little bit. Don't just eat potato. Eat potato with 3 or 4 herbs on it if you have to. Don't just have a salad with lettuce. Have 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 lettuces in there and some herbs and spices on top of it. Everything you do, add just a few more. It doesn't have to be a lot because the microorganisms are so small. Just a pinch of another herb or a spice or a nutrient or a green will feed a million of them for the next couple of days. So I need you to put it in perspective. And the longer you have them, the better. Now, why do we need to look at the large intestine? Because there are so many causes of gut dysbiosis, the dysfunction of the large intestine. And it starts off with behavioral, stress, poor sleep, not enough, too much exercise, and over-hygienizing. Using too many antibacterial wipes when you go in and out of stalls, not good. not good. But the whole use of all of these constantly around the home, we've been brainwashed by the chemical industry and unfortunately the pharmaceutical industry. No, there's time for hygiene, there's a time not, and we've gone too far on the other side. So over the COVID years, there will be a lot of gut dysfunction coming literally by people using far too much of these. They're using antibacterials to protect themselves from a virus. Oh, hold on. They're different types of microorganisms. They may not even work. Anyway, I won't go into the stupidity of it. So then you've got your toxins, water toxins, food additives, pesticides, personal care product. Then you've got your medicinal causes, antibiotics and drugs, cesarean birth, weight loss operations, proton pump inhibitors. Nearly every single drug has a negative effect on the gut. There's only a few that have positive and a few that are neutral, but the vast majority have a negative effect on the gut. So the more drugs you take, the worse it becomes. Diet, gluten, sugar, overprocessed, overcooked, deep fried, refried, all of those things. Anything that's processed is putting stress on your gut. Anything with more sugar and deep fried oils and things like that, get rid of them, eliminate them from your diet. Then you've got the opportunistic species, Helicobacter, Candida, Clostridia. Candida is also called thrush. And a lot of people say, oh, how do I control it? Guess what? Start with pH. Start with the pH in the stomach. That's the best way to control all of these. And so these are the opportunistic species that take off. We come in contact with them every single day, one way or another, and you'll get them every single day, or you'll even have them on you, but they're not a problem because you're keeping them under check with a good diet and good lifestyle. Now, of course, then obesity and weight gain contribute to these ones, the stresses as well. So this is essentially what happens. Now, this happens all the way through the digestive tract, through the esophagus, stomach, small intestine, and the large intestine. But that's where it's most familiar, leaky gut or intestinal permeability. And give or take a little bit, the picture here shows you what happens all through the body, even in your respiratory system. It's similar to this, just of the cells are a little bit different and so on, obviously. And the small intestine and stomach, they're a little bit different. And this is what they look like supposedly in the large intestine. And basically what happens is that the cells are tightly held together through what are called tight junctures. And as they get poisoned by the wrong type of microorganisms or even the toxins that we're consuming, alcohol, for example, can lead to leaky gut in the esophagus and stomach and small intestine. And so anything like that can break these tight junctures, and it creates gaps. And as a result, the toxins, even the bacteria and these food products like gluten that's not digested properly in the stomach because of the pH, goes into the large intestine and fermented, producing all these toxins, and it can get through into the blood through those gaps that are created in the walls, and of course through damaged cells. So the more we poison it, the more we damage the actual cells itself, and then you get all these other conditions that people will tell you about related to leaky gut and inflammatory bowel disease. And of course, as a result, you end up with inflammation, autoimmunity, malabsorption and nutrient deficiencies. You're not getting the right things, the nasties are getting through, and they're getting through. And as you can see on this diagram on the left bottom side, blood-brain barrier breach. See, if these toxins can break down the barrier in the large intestine, then they can also play havoc with the barrier all throughout the body, but up here in the brain. And there's this barrier which protects the brain from getting all the toxins and eliminate, it can get rid of the waste. And if that is broken down, well, then you can get some of these toxins going in there, causing damage, and more toxins of different types getting in there. Simple, strategic, we need to maintain this. Now, what feeds this? Well, it's really simple, that the major food for your small intestine, well, your large intestine cells is something called butyrate, which comes from fermentation of fibers. What poisons it are the fermentation of undigested proteins and undigested fats and all these other toxins in there. So what we want to do is make sure at a simple note, increase your fiber, your prebiotics and things like that to start looking after. And of course, other gut foods like polyphenols, but I'll talk about these later on. Now, that's the end of part one. I've given you a snapshot of it all. Now, we've included a lot. We've already got a SIBO program. We've all got a reflux program, and we've got a whole heap of information about gut. And I'm just bringing it together here. And so at a simplest level, I've now given you a lot of starting points, but bear with me. Part two will be up, and you'll see some other little secrets that you can start to do right now as a result. So I hope you got a lot of information out of this, and share it with everyone. Tell them what you can do.